I'm Luna Summer. Today we're going to be going over my Spotify Wrapped. Honestly, this is because I got tired of watching my friends' stories and watching pretty much the same artists get top 5. I just think that it's a little boring that the same 20 people constantly get top 5 of different people's Spotify Wrapped. I'm also pretty passionate about finding underrated artists or smaller artists and following them through their career. I genuinely get excited when I find out that more people are finding their music. If I'm looking down a lot, it is because I have written a list, and at the end of this video, I am gonna do some honorable mentions who do have at least 1 million monthly listeners according to Spotify. The last thing that I want to say is that Taylor Swift is not in my Spotify Wrapped at all. That is because I personally purchase all of her music on iTunes to add it to my own collection. That is just because sometimes I get paranoid about Spotify like going bankrupt, and I would like a personal collection of my own. And honestly, I trust Apple to be more sustainable more than I do Spotify. That is just my own paranoia, and I don't think that you should follow my advice anytime soon, at least. Also, I don't subscribe to Spotify Premium. I'm okay with the ads. It's nice to explore new music occasionally. But if I really love an artist or if I really love a song, I'm probably going to end up buying it on iTunes. Even though that is peak millennial culture, I am a Gen Z, but I'm an elder Gen Z, so I remember when iTunes was like the place to go for all music. And like I said, I want to feel like I own certain songs. I want that personalized ownership. I'm hoping that I can introduce you to some new artists, to underrated artists, and I'm sorry if it looks like the lighting has changed 2,000 times in this video already. I didn't like the original placement of my light box, so I've been moving it around. The final thing that I want to say before I get into my own top 5 artists according to Spotify is that I disagree with the placement of the first 2. I honestly think that they should be switched. However, as I said, if I love an artist, I'm going to personally buy their music on iTunes, so I think that I've bought more of the second artist's music, and I don't listen to him as much as I listen to the first artist on Spotify. My first artist, according to Spotify, is Cameron Sanderson. He is a UK musician and artist. I'm pretty sure he writes his own songs because they all sound really personal, and he had a long-distance relationship that was really notable to his story, and a lot of his songs reflect that. Okay, I know that I just started talking about my number 1 artist, but I realized that I have completely forgotten to talk about my favorite genres in general as like a prologue to what's on my list. But I love pop punk. That is my favorite thing. I also love emo music, although I feel like those two can get like blurred a little bit over what is really pop punk versus what is actually emo. I also love pop, folk. I think that kind of sums up my taste in music, but there will be random other things. So if you want to watch this video, continue watching, support underrated, not as well-known artists. But if my tastes are not your tastes, then I completely understand if you want to stop the video here. So as far as Cameron Sanderson goes, I would say that he is a mixture of pop, punk, emo, and he gets influences from hip-hop. My number 2 is Say We Can Fly. I honestly thought that he would be my number 1, but I have bought more of his songs on iTunes than I have Cameron Sanderson's, so I feel like I have listened to Say We Can Fly more than Cameron Sanderson, but I listen to a lot of his music on my own personal iTunes, And because I don't subscribe to Apple Music, I don't get like the summary at the end of the year for that. Say We Can Fly is his stage name. His real name is Braden Berry. I feel comfortable saying that because he has also released music under that name as well. Say We Can Fly is very lyrical and artistic, and he's a great storyteller. I believe he also writes all of his own music. There's so much that I could say about Say We Can Fly. The music that he has released under his real name is more electronic. I love both versions of his music. Say We Can Fly has been releasing music consistently since at least 2013. He is a Canadian artist. There is not a song for me that is a skip. If you enjoy the early 2000s pop punk movement or emo music in general, you should really check out Say We Can Fly. I think that you will love his music, as well as Cameron Sanderson. I think that for me personally, Say We Can Fly, I just find myself listening to his music a little bit more. My third artist is Jeremy Shada, or Shada. Honestly, I'm not even gonna pretend like I know how to pronounce his last name. He is more well known for his work on Cartoon Network, and I believe he was on a Netflix movie. Honestly, I never watched that. He just randomly popped up on my Spotify one day, and I fell in love with the old-timey value of his music. I don't personally watch Cartoon Network, so I wouldn't have known him from that, but I love the vibe of his music. It sounds to me like 1950s maybe, but he is a modern musician. His songs have a lot of references to classic movies, such as Singing in the Rain and Bewitched. He has two different songs that really embody the feel of both of those movies. I'm also obsessed with songs about Los Angeles or California, being someone who lives over 1,000 miles away from the West Coast. I mean, technically I'm on the East Coast, I guess, but I don't live near a beach. And one of Jeremy's popular songs is about Los Angeles. And yes, I play Panic at the Disco's Dying in LA on repeat a lot. So number 4 is Your Broken Hero. If you are into the early 2000s emo aesthetic, this band is for you. They have done collaborations with A Simple Plan, as well as a few other bands from the early 2000s, but I'm blanking on the names right now. Also, if you have not looked up Emo's Not Dead on YouTube, I believe that's their YouTube channel name, you are really missing out on a treat. It's really nostalgic to me. I was someone who was not even a preteen in the early 2000s, but I really liked the individualistic aesthetic of emo culture. So to me, it's really nostalgic, but it's also really funny. They've also done a cover of Taylor Swift's Love Story, which I love because I'm a Swiftie, but I also love pop punk and emo music. Number 5 on this list, and the only female vocalist in my top artists according to Spotify, is Peach PRC. I love her music. She is definitely more pop than pop punk or emo. She's just a vibe on her own. I will say that if I listen to Taylor Swift on Spotify, she would definitely be on this list, and she would probably knock Peach PRC off of the list. The top 4 out of the top 5 have under 200,000 monthly listeners according to Spotify, Peach PRC does have about 500,000, a little less than that, monthly listeners, so that's just something that I wanted to note, that all of these artists could use more support. I do have some honorable mentions who have less than 1 million monthly listeners, so I wanted to go over those really quickly. First is, if you watched American Idol this year, you'll recognize who I'm about to talk about next, but his name is Keiko, or at least his stage name is Keiko. He has 69,000 monthly listeners according to Spotify. I loved him. He was very pop punk aesthetic on American Idol, and I loved to see that personally. I was actually shocked when he got voted off of American Idol. Another pop punk-esque band that I wanted to talk about was Boys of Fall. They have about 70,000 monthly listeners according to Spotify. I don't know who to compare them to. I wish that I could have compared everyone on this list to a more notable artist, but I would say if you like Mayday Parade, you would definitely like Boys of Fall. I'm not saying that their music is like super similar, but I have listened to Mayday Parade and Boys of Fall consecutively on playlists, and I feel like they just go together well. So if you're looking for someone new that goes with Mayday Parade vibes, that's them. Next, I wanted to talk about the Workday release. They have about 17k monthly listeners according to Spotify. If you liked A Rocket to the Moon back in the day, the Workday release really reminds me of that vibe of music, so definitely check them out if you liked A Rocket to the Moon. Next, I wanted to talk about Honestly. They are a band that has about 19k monthly listeners on Spotify. I'm not saying that about everyone to like compare them to each other. I'm just saying that they're underrated artists who would probably really appreciate support. Honestly, kind of reminds me of the 1975, but a little bit more pop punk. That is just my impression of them personally. Obviously, everyone's gonna have different impressions of different artists, and I was not a music theory major by any means. What you think about a musician is probably not what I think about a musician. Next, I wanted to talk about Grayscale. I found one of their singles a few years ago, probably like 4 years ago, and I became obsessed with that one song. Unfortunately, the name of that song is blanking me, and I haven't listened to it in a good 6 months, but it was just a beautiful song. And then I found a few more of their songs just randomly on Spotify recommendations. They are a pretty solid band who I would also say is in the pop punk or emo realm, so if you like that genre, they are definitely worth checking out as well. I have a folk recommendation to give you guys, and that is Uritan. I'm going to put how to spell that on screen somewhere, but I believe that it is pronounced Uritan. She does a lot of video game music, and a lot of her music is really mythology based. Even if it's just mythology within a video game, I really love her vocal-based music, but unfortunately she has been having problems with her vocal cords, as well as a lot of other issues with her body. I think that it is an autoimmune disorder that causes inflammation, according to her website at least. I have been a fan of hers for over 7 years at least, and she has some instrumentals. She plays a lot of instruments, like probably over 10 instruments, but my favorite songs of hers have always been her vocal songs. She's also my only folk recommendation on this list. Next, I have some more pop recommendations, and then I also have a few honorable mentions who do have at least 1 million monthly listeners. So first is Kylie Muse. She is definitely more pop. Some of her music kind of reminds me of Taylor Swift, but not quite as dramatic, maybe. Rosie Darling is up next. She is awesome. I really love her song Reruns. That is like my most played song by her. Rosie Darling is also in the pop genre. Next are my more popular honorable mentions. So first is Anson Seabra. He has about 3 million monthly listeners on Spotify. I believe that a lot of his songs are also mythology based, so if you enjoy folk music or just mythology in general, I would say that he's more of a pop singer and less of a folk singer, but he is kind of somewhere in between the two, because a lot of the subject matter of a lot of his songs are derived from different mythologies. My next honorable mention is Mad Psy. If you enjoy pop, punk, or emo music, then Mad Psy is definitely a vibe. Nina Nesbitt is next. She is an international artist, and a lot of her songs kind of remind me of Olivia Rodrigo songs, but maybe a little bit less dramatic. I don't really love using the word dramatic to describe like popular singers, but if you get it, you get it. If you've listened to these artists, then maybe you'll understand that it's not like a whole music video cultural moment with them, but their music is still really good. Jessica Bio, I believe is her last name, is another one that I wanted to mention. I love her single, Best Friends with Your Girlfriend. It's pretty much a brainworm. Finally, I wanted to mention Rachel Gray. Most of the honorable mentions who do have over 1 million monthly listeners according to Spotify are in the pop category of some sort, with the exception of Anson Seabra and Mad Psy. Also, I apologize if I'm pronouncing Mad's last name wrong. I just have not pronounced Asian last names in my life. I don't have a whole lot of experience with that, so I apologize. Anyway, if you wanted to check out any of these artists, I highly recommend it. They really would appreciate support from more people, and I love introducing people to underrated artists. Stay beautiful.